Okay, welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is one of my colleagues on the YLTSIG committee, Simon Pounder. Simon has been involved in the world of teaching English for 20 years as a teacher, teacher trainer, and academic manager. He also writes materials and presents at conferences with a particular interest in developing 21st century skills for secondary students. He will be giving a TED-style talk jointly with the YLT-SIG Joint Events Coordinator Leticia Moraes at our pre-conference event on the 1st of April in Liverpool. So, welcome, Simon.
Hello, hello. It's good to be here. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Good afternoon. Okay, should we get started? Okay, so thanks everybody for joining me. I hope you can hear me okay. I think everybody can. Yes? Okay, so my talk this afternoon, or this evening as it is here in the UK, it's about using mindfulness in the secondary classroom. And I've chose to focus on lower secondary students. So as I understand it, that's kind of 12, 13, 14-year-olds. So we're going to be talking about them. Okay, as I go through the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about a definition of what I understand as mindfulness, how it can be used to work with secondary students, so lower secondary students, the effect it can have on you as a teacher, and then also some particular techniques that you might find particularly useful. Yeah? Okay. So, mindfulness, it's obviously it's quite a lot in the news at the moment. People talk about it and read about it. There's been lots of articles about it in the news in the last probably 5 years, and there's lots of different definitions of it. What I've come to understand it is, as you can see, being focused on a particular moment. So thinking about what you're doing in the present, not harking back too much to the past, not thinking too much about the future, but trying to kind of focus on the particular moment that you're in, and perhaps, you know, tuning out the negative thoughts that might be about things that have happened to you or that might be about to happen to you. Okay. Um, Now, there's been quite a lot of research being done, and it is being done, and I think will continue to be done because it is such a kind of a hot topic at the moment about how we can use this kind of technique in the classroom with our students. Um, Mindfulness is something that's being practiced in the state schools, for example. Certainly in the UK, I know about. I think in the States as well, and I think in other places around the world also. And not just for kind of older students, secondary students, but also going down into primary and sometimes even early years I've read about as well. Yeah. And the reason behind it is because of, if we think about kind of secondary learners, one of the issues that often they have is thinking a little bit about their concentration, okay, and being focused and being able to give their all when they're in that particular classroom. Okay, so you can see research has shown that mindfulness for students can help them concentrate for longer stretches and, very importantly, be more efficient because obviously they have a finite amount of time that they're in the class. Lessons tend to be, I don't know, 40, 45, maybe 60 minutes in some places, and you want them to concentrate for as long as possible. So thinking about different ways that we can get them on task and thinking and focused is really important. Um, One thing that's kind of really important and very useful for us as teachers is, of course, that it's free. You don't need any special equipment. There's lots of different things you can read about to find out how to do it. We can do it anytime, any place, okay, in the classroom, but also you can encourage students to think about it outside, at home, okay, and it has a positive impact on all aspects of the students' lives, um, because this is important for our students. When they're in their classroom and in this particular age, they're quite emotional, lots of things going on, so it does help them to kind of concentrate and focus a little bit on your classroom. Okay. Okay, so let's think a little bit about this particular age group. So as I said, I'm focusing on lower secondary students, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. We've all been through it. We know what kind of things are going on, but obviously there are some pretty kind of serious occurrences for them. Physical changes, obviously. So that has an effect on how they're feeling when they come into class. Expectations from other people, and pressure from their friends. Rising expectations. Okay, I mean, I think, in today's world, it's very important for our students to achieve good marks, good grades. There's an awful lot of pressure on people to get a good job, to kind of go on to university. And these expectations, certainly in the context in I work, they seem to be getting higher and higher. And parents and the students themselves are expecting to achieve more and more. School pressures, so I think that refers not just to their academic life, but in terms of social pressures within the class, within the school. There's an awful lot of stress for the students that they have to cope with, which relates on to the last point about their emotional fragility and the fluctuations that they might experience during the day or a week or a term. There is quite a lot of, building friendships, maybe friendships not working out as they would like them to, relationships developing, relationships changing at home. So these kind of ups and downs can certainly affect how they feel during the day and what they're able to focus on. Okay, so typical secondary classroom. Okay, so I teach a lot of classes, kind of, I guess, the same as most of you. We're teaching kind of after school classes, so it's extra English classes. So often the students have been at school for 6 hours, 7 hours. So how do they feel when they come to us already and we're asking them to sit down and then, focus for another hour, 2 hours? Okay. Clearly, there's tiredness involved. They've been at school all day, having to concentrate, talking to different people. So for them to come into the class at the end of the day, that's another thing. Perhaps they come at the weekend when they've had a full week, in days at school, homework, etc. We talked a little bit before about the stresses that are going on in their lives. So they might come in with their mind full of all manner of different things. Things going on at home, at school, and that affects their concentration and ability to learn. Stress, as I've mentioned, and then the last little point I've put down there is English lesson on the to-do list. Well, as I mentioned, I think in the last slide, there's lots of pressures on students to achieve more and more, and perhaps English is just one extra class that they have. It could be they have extra English, extra maths, extra, chemistry, all these little things to do, and the English lesson is just something else they have to get through. So how can we kind of help them get through that lesson, make it kind of relevant and important for them? Okay. Okay. I can see a few of you are talking about mindfulness, not just for the students, but also for the teachers. I'm going to come on to that next. So we can talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Yeah? So why have I chosen to focus on this particular area? And why do I think it's important for the students? And the effect that I'm hoping to to get from the students. Okay, so you can see The first one we've talked already about the kind of the stresses and the pressures that the students are under. So mindfulness, a little kind of moment to focus on what's happening in their lives, gives them a moment of respite from the daily grind. The techniques we're going to talk a little bit about in a few moments, okay, will help them open the door to greater concentration. Greater concentration means more effective learning, and I think, I find the greater the learning, the more enjoyment there is for them. Mindfulness also allows them to kind of think about their emotions, because quite often, if they have stresses going on at home or at school, they bottle it up, and that affects their ability to work through the lesson. So it does allow mindfulness in the class will allow them to express those emotions and to look a little bit at them as well. And of course, if they learn techniques that we're going to talk about today, then of course it will help them when they're a little bit older, as they move into older teenage life and university work, etc. And then I think a little bit, there's a couple of points I think there that are really important. Self-awareness. If you're working with secondary students, you can quite often see or understand that their relationship with each other is not as well as you would like it to be. They're still kind of learning to work with other people, to express themselves. There tends to be quite a lot of selfishness, egotism, I think, within their characters, because they're developing in different rates, and they're very focused on themselves. And then the last point, making more mindful decisions. So, we give students homework and they don't do it. Okay, we understand why we want them to do things in the class, why we ask them to do different things. If we can kind of help them to understand that there is meaning and a reason behind doing those things, then we hope that in the longer term they'll be more mindful about the decisions they make in terms of whatever they're doing. Yeah. Okay. Is everybody understanding things? Okay. Let's move on. Yeah. Okay. So somebody mentioned this before about teachers. Who was that? I think that was for Phil and Sirin as well. So mindfulness is also a useful tool for the teacher. I've used the same language as I did for the students because I think it's still relevant. A respite from the daily grind. We work long hours. It's difficult always to bring your best to the classroom because you're tired, because you've got, different things going on within the school or at home. So learning a little bit of mindfulness, being able to focus on the moment, will help you kind of produce that great lesson that you're capable of. For teachers as well, it allows you to kind of see the teenager as a whole person. If you're recognizing that your students can have issues, may have problems focusing, may have problems with their concentration, or have reasons why they can and why they can't do something, then I think it helps you understand where they are coming from, and lets you also allow those students to fluctuate over a period of time. That some days, some weeks, perhaps they're not going to be able to do everything you want them to because things are going on. Next couple of points are based on kind of relationships between students. I think that works within the class, so greater understanding between the students themselves, that they can kind of understand why somebody is reacting in a certain way, but also I think it helps them develop better relationships so that they become more willing to be open to each other, to understand the kind of comments that the people are making, and it helps you as a teacher as well to understand and to see that. And if you can develop those kind of relationships, then I think the classes are going to be much more enjoyable for you and for the students. Yeah? And again, I mentioned the same kind of language that I use with the students, more mindful decisions. So if you're kind of aware of kind of student things that are going on with the students, then I think you're perhaps going to be a little bit more mindful of the kind of tasks you might set them and the kind of things that you can push them to do. Yeah? Okay, there's a few comments coming in. Okay, talking about how much work that the students have. That's very important. I think, I think one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of, it's focusing and being involved in the lesson as much as possible, because there can be an awful lot of downtime where students, are not working as hard as they could or as hard as we would like them to. So if we can develop kind of techniques to help them do that kind of thing, then I think you're going to get more out of each individual lesson. Okay, so let's have a little look at some kind of ideas, particular ideas that we can use with mindfulness. Okay, quite a lot of techniques that you see. Maybe you yourself have got apps for mindfulness. There's lots of apps you can get onto your telephone. Lots of articles about it. They start with the way to start is to pause, reflect, closing your eyes, breathing technique, and focusing on your breath or focusing on sounds around you. I think that's a really good way if you can kind of encourage your students at the start of class to do those kind of things. I mean, I do appreciate, and we're going to come on to that later, that you are working with, secondary students who might be resistant, might laugh at each other, for example. So I think, it's a path. You do have to kind of take your students down this path and understand that they are going to perhaps not take to it straight away, but it is something that I think is worth focusing on. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So mindful moment. I've called this next slide. So these are kind of some things that we can get our students to focus on. So focusing on the moment, but also the enjoyment of focusing on one thing. Often there's so many things going on in a classroom that you might kind of think, okay, how can I get them to understand what they're doing? I think it's very important to tell our students, to help them understand why they are doing something, what they are doing, and how it's going to help them in the longer run. Okay, so you might, you ask them to write a sentence. That's a challenging thing, and it can, if you can get them to focus on the success of doing it well, I think that's a nice kind of mindful moment for them to reflect and to think back on what they've achieved. So these are all little kind of things that we can tick off as an achievement. Yeah. So the challenge of writing a sentence, as I said, the achievement of correctly defining a word. Okay, so it's all about encouragement, helping them to understand that at a particular moment that they're doing something really well, and that kind of encouragement, we hope, and that praise will lead them on to kind of to try and find greater and greater successes. Yeah? Experiences. So talking a little bit about what you enjoyed about your day, your film, your school day. It's all about kind of getting people to express themselves and to think about what they're doing and why they're doing it. Yeah? Okay, so a few little kind of things there that I suggest might be ways if we can get first steps into mindfulness. Okay, this is something that I've done in my class myself. Is getting students into a kind of circle and building up that trust where they are willing to express themselves and talk just a little bit about their lives and about how things are going on, and setting it up for the class. Okay, so we've done kind of different things, talking about their day, what was good, what went wrong, how they feel about it, getting them to express those emotions, getting those emotions out into the open will help them focus later on in the lesson, so they're not kind of, storing things up. Sharing some positive news, of course. Talking about something that's important to them. I think if at this age group, there can be a kind of a degree of mistrust. They're still kind of developing those relationships. It's important to them how they appear in front of their peers. So getting them to talk about something that's important to them. Lots of different things, their objects, a feeling, an experience, but getting them to kind of express themselves is a really nice way of kind of bringing the class together. Having the opportunity to ask each other about, free questions, okay? I think that's a nice way of developing those relationships. But you can see, I think the last point is very, very important. Confidentiality. We're trying to build trust within the class. So we definitely need to be aware and to make it very clear to them that what's going on is to remain within the walls of the classroom and not to be used against somebody. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Okay. So mindfulness activity. So music. Well, music. It's nothing new. We've all used it in different ways. Background music to help people to relax, or in the opposite way to kind of be creative. But I think also in terms of reacting to music, so listening to a piece of music and expressing their emotions, to help them unpick their feelings. You could play different types of music and get them to write down adjectives about how they feel about it and why. And it's all about, getting students to be able to express themselves and to feel more confident in different things. Okay, there's a couple of questions coming in. What if the students are not fluent to express themselves? Can we use L1? That's a very good and difficult question. I think we're focusing on a number of different ways. How can we encourage trust between students? Well, I think we want them to talk about different things. So L1 is, if that's your main goal, if you feel that in the classroom that maybe the trust is not there, and you think that it would be beneficial for them to be able to express themselves in that L1, because that would take you beyond, get you over a particular hurdle, then I think that's definitely practical and useful. But I think as much as possible, it'd be great if they can do it in English. But obviously there are limits. Yeah? Okay, a few more kind of ideas here. So visualizations, getting the students to describe a journey or their journey to school, what they see, what they feel, smells, sounds, perhaps tastes. Similarly with talking about a moment in time, talking about a photo, talking about a good or a bad experience. These are all ideas that are getting the students to focus on their feelings at a particular moment. And what was going on around them, and to notice different things. I think you could expand this. It could be made into a survey. You can get the students themselves to write questions, get them to interview each other. You could do it as a piece of writing. You get them to, a lot of our students have telephones. Get them to record it into their telephone, play it back. There's lots of ideas in terms of pre-teaching vocabulary, different kind of things going on, so you can make it more than just a few minute activities. Yeah. Lots of nice comments coming in from Sarah in there. I think that's really nice. Make your classrooms enjoyable and the students are motivated. Very good. And TPR is very useful. Okay, a few little things here. Okay, that I've used. A mood diary. How are you feeling? And then a couple of kind of things here that came out. A colleague of mine did some kind of classroom research looking at his students and how they were reacting to the lessons. And little things kind of came up. For example, did they have time for breakfast? Were they up late doing homework? Did they have a row? Okay, getting them to focus on what affects their ability to learn is a really kind of useful task to do, because I think once they can understand what makes it the best learning environment for them, they're going to be able to kind of do those things a little bit better. Yeah, and also for yourself as well. If you think about what makes, when do you have good days, when do you have bad days, what's the difference? If you can focus on those little things and work out what it is, you're more likely to be able to, produce your best over time. Okay, I think that slide is kind of self-explanatory. Talk about something you're grateful for. Again, you can set it up in different ways. It's a questionnaire, it's a piece of writing, pre-teaching some vocabulary, thinking about what they're going to talk about. There's lots of things you can do there. Yeah. Okay, just a few minutes to go. I think I've nearly finished my slides, but please, if there's any questions, start sending them in. Okay, another little technique here, my 1 to 5 senses. Yeah. So you can see, close your eyes for 1 minute and get the students to write down or think about those different things. A thing you can taste, 2 things you can smell, blah blah blah, etc., etc., etc. All these kind of things of kind of feeling emotions, and getting them to express themselves, to think about what they're doing at the moment. Okay. Okay, and let me move on just before we finish to talk a little bit about the experiences that I've had with using these techniques. Um, I think students do appreciate being given the opportunity to kind of talk about their worries and their problems. Perhaps we don't see them kind of every day or as regularly as their school teachers, but they perhaps don't have they don't have the relationships at school or at home that they would like, and being able to be there for them, I think, is a great way of encourage them to kind of share what they're doing. And as I write, they enjoy their turn in sharing a portion of their daily life, and want to express themselves. Yeah. We've talked a lot before about them calming down, getting their stresses out, and being able to focus on their task a little bit better. And if you're doing kind of project work or task-based learning, then I think, which relies an awful lot on them collaborating with each other, working together, and perhaps working alone a little bit more rather than being so teacher-led, then I think, using mindfulness is a great idea. Okay. My experiences. So, as I think I mentioned before, it takes time. These are kind of things that perhaps the students are not used to. They don't do in their regular school lives. So you need to understand that it takes time. It takes time for them to build up trust with each other, especially, but also with you. So you do need to be flexible. You need to be able to allow them to take that time, and in terms of your expectations, some of them might not like it. Some of them might not be want to do it, but being focusing on that moment is reflective of that as well. Yeah. So, just before we finish, okay? So my recommendations from my kind of experience: be open with your class. So tell them why you're doing it, what you hope to achieve from it. As I mentioned before, they might be embarrassed, they might be resistant, but I think you do have to persevere, and I think you will get something out of it. They need to practice. It's not going to come all at once. It's something that you need to do kind of, every lesson, every week, so they become more familiar with it. And this is you hope you're kind of you're leading them into kind of lifelong practice, or certainly within the realm while you're working with them or in their school life. So I think practice is very important, um, and reflect on what you're doing, evaluate what you're doing, and adapt it. If something doesn't sit right or it's not working with the students, think about how you can change it and kind of move it forward. Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
that's kind of
We're out of
what
time,
I've got to
but
say.
I
I mean, if
guess
there's
if
any
you have
questions, I'd love to
questions,
kind of hear them
Simon,
and
would
help
they be
you
able to
answer
contact
them.
you somewhere? Hmm. Okay. Should they contact you by email? Okay, great. So Simon,
Yes, 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 of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
great.
You want
So
my?
Simon's going to put his email into the chat box, and we
Maybe I can
thank
add in
you
my
so
email. Yeah.
much for that wonderful
Yeah, by email.
presentation
Yeah. I'll
about
put.
mindfulness. So
I'm
many
gonna write it
things
in
that I
now.
think
Yeah.
we as teachers can apply to our classroom.
There you
It's
go.
wonderful for our students. And also, I would like to say again, we're looking forward to your joint TED Talk on the 1st of April in Liverpool. So everyone, please just a round of virtual applause for Simon. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to have a 5-minute break, actually 4 minutes, and I'm going to